Welcome to the conversation on life and relationships. I'm Joshua Williams. I'm glad that we finally had a chance to connect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So I really was like really fascinated about like your content because I know that you're all on Instagram, you're on Facebook, you're on like a whole different a lot of platforms, and it's centered around like helping individuals, helping couples kind of live better together and make love better together. And
Absolutely.
that concept is it's amazing. Like it really is.
It took some years getting to, but I was very pleased once it finally hit me. Once kind of God said, okay, this is what I want you to do. So I was like, okay, let's go with that name. And it encompasses everything that I wanted the brand and the business to be. It
Okay.
sucks for emails, but
Okay.
the concept is great.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of what I guess the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk to you about is that journey, right? Like, how did you get to like I guess that concept of making love better together? Like, where did that concept start unfolding?
It started actually as kiss and makeup.
Okay,
Because I was always the one, I was in a relationship where I was always the one trying to fix it, always trying to make it right. And I remember venturing into selling adult novelty toys. So that's where Kiss and Makeup came from.
okay,
And so the toys would just kind of sell themselves. So
uh-huh,
I was like, okay, well, what's missing? So then I started sneaking into people's houses, setting up romantic rendezvous. So
okay,
that encompassed anything from dinner to rose petals to couples massages, running bath water, dessert, the whole bit. And
yeah,
everything would just kind of be a romantic rendezvous in someone's home or hotel room.
okay,
And that feeling was amazing. I still get goosebumps when I set up one
yeah,
because only one person generally knows. So it's a complete surprise to the other person.
yeah,
And I've had people get pregnant on my watch. I've had people
okay,
get married. I've
yeah,
had a couple flat out tell me, she doesn't know us. She doesn't
yeah,
know anything about us, but call me the next day like, this was absolutely amazing. I don't know how
yeah,
you were able to figure out all the little nuances, but this was amazing. So I was like,
yeah,
okay, let's see where else we can take this business to. And
yeah,
then I noticed while couples were having great sex that one night or a connection that one night, they were missing so many other components to healthy relationships. So I kind of gravitated to, I went back to school, I got my degree. I did not get my degree as a therapist, but I took every class I could. I kind of built my own degree around how we interact first as friends, family members, couples. So I took dance classes and cooking classes, and all of that kind of fused together to let me know it's not just me struggling. And that's where the whole making love better together came from. It
yeah,
wasn't just me, it was other couples, it was other women, it was other men. And if we want to restore balance to this thing called love, it's going to take all of us coming together collectively to share our stories. We're taught as African Americans, oh no, you don't tell that, you don't share that. And I think that's what's missing from the help part of a lot of relationships and relationship building. So that's where making love better together came from.
Oh wow, and that sounds like a heck of a journey too. Like,
Yeah, it's been 20 plus years in the making.
oh wow, 20 years. So even with, I guess that great, it's a really great concept. It really is. Like, was it difficult in the beginning for, I guess, the couples to kind of be comfortable with you helping them along with that? Like, was it difficult for people to embrace it?
That is still the struggle, believe it or not, because a lot of people don't want to do coaching, counseling, or any type of therapy. And what I found is I do a lot of masking. And what I mean by masking is I'll say, so we're going to have a couple's dinner.
Okay.
While I'm cooking for you and it's amazing and we're having this great meal, I'm going to throw in some questions that get us talking about some of the issues that some of the people in that room are having in their relationships. So it becomes like you and I talking right now, a casual conversation where the pressure is no longer on them to address the issues. It's on me to bring up these issues in ways that the couple can kind of navigate through them on their own without looking like, well, she told our business or he told
Yeah.
our business. So I kind
Yeah.
of do it that way. Or I'll have a toy party, which I call them workshops because I don't really like them to be known as toy parties. So I'll have a workshop, which is owning your femininity. It'll be a group of women that are afraid to talk about issues in their marriage, in their sex lives. And I already know what the issues are going into it. So it's easier for me to navigate those things while I'm just really pushing one thing, but I'm really there to talk to you about something else.
Yeah. So when you get those couples that like literally directly ask you, how can we have like more sex in our relationship? What do you tell those people? Like, what advice do you give those people?
Well, I ask a series of questions first because I got to know what's going on before I can tell you what to do to engage in more of. So, she may have a really hectic job, but he wants more sex.
Yeah.
Well, what are you doing to help her with this hectic job? Are you helping with the laundry? Are you, bringing in takeout? Like, what are you doing to make her job easier so that there can be more sex? Or if there's a nutritional issue or if someone needs to go to the doctor, I'm all for asking questions first so that I can recommend the right methodology to kind of help them achieve their goal.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's basically like really just kind of, I guess, asking those probing questions to, I guess, figure out what the underlying issues are.
Absolutely.
And then just kind of working on solutions from there.
Absolutely. Because it's definitely not cookie cutter, and what applies to one couple definitely does not apply to another couple, but some of the same similar issues, is just how to get there is a different route maybe.
Yeah. So when people think about like sex and then they think about intimacy, like just being intimate with their partner, how do you explain that difference between the act of sex and then being intimate with their partner?
I compare it to men and women because men and women communicate very differently. So
Yeah.
sex to men is intimacy to women. So while they're the same things, it's just described differently. If you explain it that way, it kind of helps the couples understand better roles and how to achieve more sex and more intimacy. So I would say to a man, okay, foreplay to her is foreplay all day. It's not just come home and let's do the do. It's, babe, how's your day going? Oh, you look really nice this morning before you left the house. That's intimacy to her. But it's to achieve the sex later. So they go hand in hand.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, like, yes, but that's kind of how you have to approach it though, because if you, I guess, talk to a man about sex or intimacy, you're gonna get a glazed look in that person's face.
Absolutely.
Because it's like that idea of what you're saying, it may be foreign. Like it may be foreign to some people. And do you find that you kind of have to kind of break it down to a certain extent?
All the time. Because I personally learn through examples, I tend to share that wisdom that very same way. For example, I say to men, okay, so how do you like your macaroni? Do you like your macaroni dry or do you like your macaroni wet?
Yeah.
Simple analogy,
Yeah.
but the only way to get it wet is to mix the right ingredients and keep it in the oven for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
But if you overcook it, kind of like how we are overworked in our relationships, then you're going to have dry macaroni. Now they're like, so you mean to tell me if I want wet macaroni, all I got to do is stir it differently? Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you put it in a way that they understand it better. Just like I tell men, when it comes to sex, it's not attached to their emotions. Yeah. So while you're mad for 2 weeks at your man because of something he did, that's 2 weeks where you're not having sex.
Yeah.
Now you got some woman at the job complimenting him on his tie, and you're wondering why he's tie shopping.
Yeah.
Now that gives them a different analogy of, oh, wow, okay, so he needs this. Yes, he needs this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just different ways that I explain it. And, I have a lot of people that are angry with some of the things that I say in terms of like roles and our backbone as women and how we're meant to lead and guide the relationship, but we're not the head. So, I get a lot of flack for some of the things I say, but then once I put it in perspective, it's like, oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. But I guess that's all how I guess the people perceive it, right? Like how
Absolutely.
Yeah, how the information is being taken. but I guess at the end of the day, your approach is more of building better couples together and not apart. So whatever approach that they perceive it as, it's all love. Like it's all going in one direction, right?
And it's more, I'm going to put it out there, but you're
Yeah.
going to actually do the work to put it together. Like one of the exercises I have is where couples do a vision board,
Yeah.
because ideally he has one way of seeing the relationship and she has one way of seeing the relationship, and it doesn't always go together. So I'll have them separate, do their own vision board, explain it, and then say, okay, now how can you bring it together? And then I have them work on a board together.
Yeah.
So it's like they're doing the work, but I'm just putting out the different strategies that they can use to get to the work.
Yeah. And that's basically just providing them with a blueprint.
Absolutely.
And they
For
just
them.
yeah, like providing them with a blueprint for them, and then they taking that blueprint and then just putting their spin on it, their approach on it, and just helping them build their connection, right?
Absolutely.
So what happens though when you have, either one person or the other person, I guess, sensitive about that topic of the word sex, right? Because sometimes talking about sex, depending on which party it is sometimes a difficult conversation because that person may feel like insecure or, you know, lacking or whatever the case may be. So how do you get people to like approach it with that individual that is having that issue? Like what is that advice that you give those individuals?
It's funny that you asked that. More of my clients say things like, it's really easy talking to you. And one is because we have that connection, or I
Yeah.
make it easier for them to talk about it.
Yeah.
And two, a lot of it has to do with the synergy that we have. And then three, the confidentiality, because everybody goes through something in their relationship,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to sex. And then again, I'm asking questions because a lot of what we don't do, what we don't say, what we can't do is tied into a number of things: religion, taboo. We didn't do this. We didn't grow up doing this, things like that.
Yeah.
And then I kind of put it in an analogy, whereas these are things that you want as a human. And that's why it's important that you identify those things. So
Yeah.
when I'm talking to women, I'm asking questions like, what's your pleasure? And they're like, what? Because most women don't know what a
Yeah.
pleasurable experience is to them because they're always serving the mate. So
Yeah.
it's like I ask the difficult questions, and I don't always ask for an answer when I'm
Yeah.
asking the difficult questions, but it's something that I want you to think about, and something you're going to take with you long term. Like this just isn't this workshop session. This is the rest of your life. And so I approach it from that angle. And like I said, I ask a lot of questions to help me get to how I can help them. So if they're struggling in the arena of sex, whereas she's not giving it enough or he's not giving it enough, then we need to figure out other solutions. And then I also ask couples to be open, because everybody's not well endowed, everybody's not overly active. And if you are with a partner that is expecting those things, then you have to have an open mind when it comes to stuff like that, because someone's going to walk away unpleased. Now you're leaving a crack in your foundation for infidelity to creep into that relationship because you're not having honest conversations about it.
Yeah. So you encourage, like, no matter what, communication and
Absolutely.
and
And not just communication, effective communication,
Mhm.
real, vulnerable, let's talk about this without judgment conversations. Because a lot of times there's prejudgment. Anytime we talk, well, you're not as big as I'd like you to be. Ooh, well, where'd that come from? Well, you're an ocean. You know what I mean? Like it's like little things like that, that those little jabs, those are judgment jabs. But you knew what you were getting into when we lay down together.
Yeah.
So how can we make it better together?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. And I guess a lot of that is being solution minded too. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's okay to kind of identify what the actual issue is, but you can't live in the issue. Like you actually have
No.
to figure out what's the plan B, like what's the next step, right?
Yeah. What's the next step? And then how can we implement some fun into these next steps? How can we implement some play into these next steps where everybody's walking away satisfied sexually?
Yeah. So when it comes to, like, I guess confidence and really building that self-esteem, in a relationship format, especially when it comes to like the sexual aspect of it. How do you advise like clients and if they have low confidence, like low self-esteem, and that's affecting their relationship? What do you tell people then?
With men, I refer them to another man because I can't tell men how to be men.
Yeah,
But if I were to give them some encouraging words, it would be first, definitely start working out
yeah,
because that increases and builds stamina. I'm
yeah.
also going to talk to them about nutrition, diet, and food
Okay.
because when you eat better, you taste better down there.
Mm-hmm.
And how you secrete hormones. Also, I also recommend that everyone gets shaved or waxed down there because you appear bigger and it's fresher. So
Yeah,
those are just some of the ways that I can encourage men to be a little bit more confident in their. And then I also add, if you become a selfless lover, meaning the men, if you
yeah,
become a pleaser, then
yeah,
that's only going to benefit you in the long run. And
yeah,
most men have not been taught to be a pleaser.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
with women, it's always love yourself first because when you feel good about you, when you honor and love you, that shows up in every aspect of your relationship, your job, your marriage, how you walk around the house, things of that nature. So there are steps that I actually have for the women.
yeah,
Some of them involved looking at yourself in the mirror naked, it involves a personal photo shoot.
yeah,
With yourself, you and your phone. You know, you don't have to send your pictures to your mate,
yeah,
but you can if you want to, but
yeah,
they're for you so that you can be okay with all of your lumps, all of your rolls, what your vagina looks like. Because there are so many women, believe it or not, that don't even know what it looks like. That's crazy to
yeah,
me. But
yeah,
to some women, it's like, oh, I've never looked at it before. And I'm like, what?
yeah,
So I tell them to have a photo shoot with it and acknowledge every mole, every lump, every crease, every crevice.
yeah,
Because again, once you find pleasure in it, once you find it beautiful, then you'll anticipate that from your mate.
yeah. So when you say that, right, like what you just said to those individuals, like, is it like, how do they take it? Like, what's that look? Like, is it like a glazed look? Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that she said that. I didn't
Yeah,
take a.
well, sometimes everyone's not necessarily comfortable with it. So we
Yeah,
have to start off slow. So that
yeah,
may involve, when you put your lotion on, don't
yeah,
rush and put your lotion on, take your
yeah,
time. When you take your bubble bath, stare at yourself in the mirror, marvel at your body,
yeah,
marvel at the things that you find beautiful in you, and then work your way down to that area.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So like a slow progression type
Yes,
deal.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So start at the top, just gotta work your way there.
Absolutely. Because if you ask women all the time, their hair is their crown and glory. And,
Yeah,
they may like their smile, they may like their lips. But I
yeah,
want you to get to loving every part of you.
yeah, yeah. So something that I also seen, I guess, on your website, the art of dating, and I wanted to kind of ask you about, I guess, that concept because I seen it, I read it, it was like it was interesting, and I kind of wanted to actually kind of hear more from you about that because it's finding love on and offline.
Well, it's
You're good.
um, I wrote a book called Making Love Better Together, The Art of Intimacy. And what it does is it takes couples on a journey of the appreciation of self and each other.
Uh-huh.
So the dating part comes with me suggesting date night tips so that couples can get out of the rut that they're in and never stop dating. Because, when you're first together, you're dating all the time and you're on the phone and you're texting and you're sexting. In the beginning, it's all of that. And then somewhere the kids come in, the mortgage, the dog, the work, and it kind of hinders all of those things. So for me, I kind of take them back to remember how you first met. Remember
Yeah.
when you wrote love notes. Remember when you went on date nights. And then I also pair those date night suggestions with some of our products, which is also fun. Say for instance, he has a job where
Yeah.
he travels. Then
Yeah.
there's one toy that we have where she puts it on and he can see that she has it on with an app on his phone. So he can turn that on and pleasure her from long distance.
Oh wow.
Or there's the vibrating panties, which is also great for I call group dates. Now, even though we're in COVID, You have your core group of friends that you're still okay with. You
Yeah.
invite everybody over for dinner, and she
Mhm.
has on these vibrating panties. So he
Mhm.
has the remote control. So he can zap her whenever he wants to, mid
Yeah.
conversation, mid sentence, mid dinner. And it's the most
Mhm.
fascinating thing ever because she has to maintain her composure while she's having an orgasm.
Yeah.
So it's like stuff like that that kind of arouses the relationship and sparks spontaneity in the relationship. I have couples cooking together,
Yeah.
taste testing. I have
Yeah.
couples baking, because those are things that couples tend to forget. There's one date night suggestion where I just have you kiss. Like,
Hmm.
when's the last time you passionately kissed your mate? And I'm talking making love to all of your face.
Mhm.
Couples forget that, and there's so much pleasure in it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's basically yeah, that's an interesting framework when you put that into like a, I guess, a book or a platform scenario where individuals can come through, read that, and just really start like navigating through that in their own relationship.
Absolutely. And I have a his and her list. So the book, the way it's lined up is he has a list of things he needs to get, she has a list of things that she needs to get, and then they come together with those things. And it's a book that you can repeat over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I'm guessing like and whenever they go through these different exercises and scenarios, that really like to a point lights that fire. Like it like
Absolutely.
reignites something that was like dormant for them, and that just kind of just really just they just really start embracing it, right?
Or didn't know that that was something that they liked. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
okay.
Because a lot of couples don't have this conversation. So, what's your fantasy sexually? What's your kink sexually? How often would you like sex? How often? You know what I mean? Like, we're not having those very real conversations. So it opens the door for that to actually happen.
Yeah. But would you think that individuals or couples not are not having that type of conversation because I guess the word sex, people like even when you say that word out loud to certain individuals, they can either smile or they can either just kind of retract because it's like when you hear that, sometimes it's like that word is taboo to a certain extent, but it's connected to everything.
It's connected to everything. I think sex isn't the word that makes people unedged. I think everything that comes along with sex is
Yeah,
what makes people on edge. Like, you can
yeah,
say sex and it's like, okay, she'll giggle and he like, yeah, let's
yeah,
do it.
yeah,
But once you start talking about pleasure in that,
yeah,
and what's your pleasure in that, then
yeah.
that's where it becomes uncomfortable because one, no one's ever asked her what's your pleasure.
Mhm.
Two, 9 times out of 10, she's never experienced, like I said, a giver in the bedroom. So those things don't naturally come to her.
Yeah,
Whereas 9.5 times out of 10, he's going to have an orgasm.
yeah,
So things like, okay, well, I really like oral sex. Okay. If your mate doesn't like giving oral sex, now we have a problem. But if you don't talk about it, then how can you really understand that he or she really likes oral sex?
yeah,
You
yeah.
just assume that, this fits here and that fits there, and okay, we're going to make it work. But depending on what that person's pleasure is, it may not work to a certain extent.
Yeah. So that's just kind of understanding the intricacies of like the act of sex and how the other person feels and their wants, their needs, their desires. But the only way that you can actually determine that is, I guess, like you said, effective communication.
Absolutely. And I also have a signature thing that I have couples do in their date night. It's called a scavenger hunt. And it's called the Making Love Better Together Scavenger Hunt. And
Okay.
what that does is it puts you in a position where you're searching for things. So you can take things around your house. If you have honey, you can use honey,
Mhm.
fruit, whatever you have in your house, you can use these things. But the only way you can communicate in the scavenger hunt is he or she has to go hunting for your pleasure zones.
Yeah.
And the only way that person can respond is with a moan. So if they don't moan, then you know you're not hot, kind of like hot cold.
Yeah.
So that's a great way for him and her to find each other's spots without saying, well, what do you like?
Yeah.
And how do you like it? So, that helps you find your mate's erogenous zones, and more importantly, help you kind of remember where they are. Because sometimes when you tell your mate, I like this or I like this, then they go and they do that for 2 seconds and then they're back to what they're used to.
Yeah.
And I tell couples all the time, you're only as good as your last lay.
Wow. Yeah.
So if you were whack in the last 5 relationships and no one ever told you you were whack, then you're now taking that whackness into the 6th relationship.
Okay. Yeah.
So if that person don't ever say to you, ooh, no woman likes that. No woman. No woman that I know, no woman that I've ever known
Yeah.
like that. So please stop doing it. Then they will continue with that in the next relationship and the next relationship. The same with women. Teeth
Yeah.
don't go there.
Yeah.
But if no one ever taught her that, then like I said, they'll go from relationship to relationship thinking that they are the bomb, jumping into the room like da da da, da I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reality is no one's being pleased except
Yeah.
that person.
Yeah. But I mean, I think with you even saying that, I think that to a point, you have to have a very open mind, a very not a very thick skin to a certain extent, because when people are like judged, especially on sexual performance, because it's such a vulnerable thing when you talk about sex and performance in that. Like they have to have an open mind about learning new things and learning new approaches in order to kind of be better, right?
Absolutely. And that's when I go preschool, you know, because sometimes you have to go back to what you know, which is preschool with building blocks. So
Yeah.
you always want to encourage your partner in those
Mhm.
aspects.
Yeah.
Like, babe, I really like when you do this, but I love when you do this.
Yeah.
Not you're doing it wrong, please stop. That never works in a conversation. But
Yeah.
if you say, oh, I love the way you kiss me, but if you kiss me here like this, that would be amazing. Do you want to try it? See, that
Yeah.
sounds more better and more inviting if you approached it from that aspect to, I just hate the way you do everything. Please stop.
Yeah.
Now that's being petty and that's attacking ego.
Yeah.
But if you want to build on the thing that you have, then you embrace what is, and then you kind of take it to the next level with what it is that you like.
Yeah.
And then, of course,
So
there are all the tips that I have. So,
but like I said, all the tips that you have, they're really helpful because they're really detailed. Like they're really
yes,
like to the point, to the letter, so the couple can actually take these specific steps to reach a specific outcome.
absolutely.
And that's, I guess that's the genius part about it. That's a really like really evolved part about it, is when you have those key steps to get you to from point A to point B.
Absolutely. And I have this one tool called the Bedroom Audit. And people are like, the bedroom audit, and what are you doing in my bedroom? And it's like, it's not what you think. It is so
Yeah.
not what you think. The
Yeah.
bedroom audit just basically says sometimes you may have to remove the TV. Sometimes your bedroom may need a total makeover if you're not having sex in the bedroom because everything else is in the bedroom, like the kids or a pile of clothes, or the bedroom has become the dumping ground.
Yeah.
So you need to clean all that up and you need to feng shui it according to you and your mate. So that means you go shopping together. See how everything is tied together?
Yeah.
You go shopping together and you revamp your bedroom so that you can have more pleasurable things going on in the bedroom.
Yeah. So when it comes to like forming that true connection with someone like your partner, like forming that real solid connection, what do you think is like the hardest part for like individuals to do to form a connection with like someone new or even like their partner? What's that roadblock sometimes?
Real communication about wants and desires. A lot of people most times go into a thing with unrealistic expectations, undiscussed expectations. And so they're building their foundation on things that they never discussed,
Mhm.
things that they never confirmed or affirmed. So you're expecting a thing that you've never talked about. I expect him to take care of the finances. Well, you never discussed that. I expect him to, or he expects her to cook 3 days a week. They never discussed that. They just went into it like, ooh, you fine too. And then there's all this sexual chemistry, but they haven't discussed what do you want out of this thing? Because that's rocking the boat.
Yeah.
And most people don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. Like sometimes I guess that's like that most difficult thing right there is, avoiding conflict, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
avoiding that hard conversation because you don't want to upset the other person.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, well, I don't want to say that, this, and this out of
Mhm.
fear that it's going to have this type of reaction. But
Yeah.
wouldn't you rather get the reaction early so you can move on? Because there's this thing as you get older, you value your time a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I'd rather not waste my time. If this COVID-19 has not taught us anything else, it's taught us the value of time
Yeah.
and not wasting it. And that's one of the things that I think people should look at when they're talking about relationships. Do you want to waste 5 years dating someone knowing that you want to get married? So it's like, what do you want? And
Yeah.
that's what I ask a lot. What do you want? And
Yeah.
most people don't know. They can tell you everything they don't want, or they can tell you this list that they have that is imaginary or based off of someone else's list or based off a list that they told them that they should have. But that may not be who's going to treat you the way you want to be treated or give you the things that you want to have.
Yeah. Yeah. So that means like when you have the opportunity to make specific changes in your life, that's, you grasping at that opportunity when it's presented in order to kind of make things better, right?
That, and again, no one's asking people, what do you want?
Mhm.
They're telling people what they should have, what they should expect, what they should want, what that list should look like.
Yeah.
And like, oh, you need to be married by 30, and you need to have 2.5 kids by 32,
Yeah.
and you need to have all your finances. Well, if that's not your life, then you need to take that a different approach to things.
Yeah.
Or he should be, I hear this a lot. I want a man that's 6'2" and works out and has, makes six figures, but you don't go to the gym. You don't work out. You don't have six figures. So what are you all going to talk about? What will you all have in common?
Yeah.
Opposites, they say opposites attract, but if you have nothing in common, how long is that opposite going to attract before you bump heads?
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, you're right. You're right about that. And but would you say that that's like maintaining like realistic expectations to a certain extent too?
Well, that's why I said in the beginning, we're not discussing what expectations are from a thing. Because one, we don't know what to expect from ourselves. Two,
Yeah.
you're bringing in a whole nother person and you're not having that conversation about what you expect from each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it comes to like maintaining a healthy relationship, what do you think that like some of those key tips are to maintaining a healthy relationship?
Listening, asking questions which are built around the conversation, not asking flat on questions that's going to lead to answers. It's what? It's dating.
Yeah.
And dating is the gathering of information.
Yeah.
So you're not dating to have sex and rush into a relationship. And I say this to people all the time. There's so many of us that are rushing to date, rushing to have sex, rushing to fall in love, only to discover we've fallen in love with someone we don't even like.
Yeah.
So to avoid some of that happening, dating is to gather the information about someone. It's looking, it's listening with your ears, it's listening with your eyes. You know what I mean? You're
Yeah.
going to their house, you're spending time with each other, you're getting to know that person until you see something or discover something that you don't like. And
Yeah.
then once that happens, you need to be adult enough to make a decision if you want to continue knowing what you know or if you want to discontinue. And I think that's the struggle that most people have. They draw a line in the sand and say, I don't want a man who smokes, or I don't want a woman who smokes. But she smokes weed or he smokes weed.
Yeah.
So now you've scratched out the line and you've accepted them in, but you said you didn't want anybody that smokes. So now already you've already chalked up what you said you wanted and you've settled for what you don't want.
Yeah.
If you meet someone that says, well, I just want to see where this thing goes, and you're in the mind frame of you want a relationship, then that's not the person for you. But most of us want to see where it goes too, so that we can kind of convert them to come over to our side to what we want. No, they said, I don't want a relationship. So now, as that person dating that person, you need to make a conscious decision if this is a struggle you want to deal with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where the struggle comes in.
It is. That is definitely where the struggle comes in. It really is, because it's almost like two wheels competing against each other to a certain extent.
Absolutely.
It's like their
And
wheel.
two wheels that we didn't discuss what the wheel was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes, sometimes you do have those, I guess, those alpha couples where two people are alphas. And then you have those alpha and beta situations where one person's the alpha, one person's the beta. And if you're competing like that, one person is trying to please the other person, and the other person isn't getting pleased at all. So it's like you just got to find that fine line between, like you said, effective communication and figuring out how to make both needs to be met to a certain extent, like how to fulfill
Absolutely.
both persons' needs.
And it's not to say that they can't work together. It's just, okay, we know that we're both this.
Mm-hmm.
Where can you let go of some of your reign, and where can I let go of some of my reign, and how can we do it together? It
Mm-hmm.
really does always bounce back to how can we do it together.
Yeah. And would you say compromise is very helpful too?
Listen, it's relationships is a constant decision to give and take while simultaneously giving and taking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you hear these stories about people saying that, oh, that person's never going to change, and there's no way for these things to kind of get better because this person's always going to be that way. In your opinion, do you think that if you show a person that if you do things this way and do things this way, it could be better for you? Do you think that it's possible for change to actually happen?
Change occurs in one of three scenarios. That person is willing to change and see things differently. Something tragic or dramatic happens in their life that forces them to change, or they have some type of deliverance. People don't change because of other people. And if anyone goes into any type of relationship expecting that person to change, then they're doing themselves a disservice. You can pray for that person, but you can't, they won't change just because you want them to. You, as that person, have to make a decision and decide, can you stay where you are, knowing that this isn't going to change? Or will you be happier if you go? And I never tell people to leave, but I leave them with that so that they can decide for themselves. Is this where you want to be 20 years from now? Knowing what you know now.
Yeah. So when you look at that, I guess the way that I phrase that particular question and look at it from, I guess, the other aspect of like the sexual aspect of it. Like when you show a person, this is what you like, this is how I want you to do it, and this is the way that it should be done, and they still just, they don't quite gravitate around the idea and the formula of how to do it. Is that possible to change? Or is that something that a person just kind of has to kind of just be okay with to a
So I'll
certain
give you this analogy.
Okay.
Guy and a girl meet.
Uh-huh.
He loves oral sex.
Mm-hmm.
He never shares that information with this woman, but he loves oral sex. He loves to receive it. She doesn't do it. They get together, they get married. They have a whole couple kids,
Mm-hmm.
but she still doesn't do it. But
Mm-hmm.
this is something that he loves. What do you think is going to happen?
That's a tough question. It is.
Unfortunately, because we have desires, one or two things will happen. Either you will completely curb your desires to make sure someone else is happy,
Mm-hmm.
or you're going to leave that crack in the foundation for someone else to come and do the things that your husband or wife is not doing. But it wasn't a deal breaker for you.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by you got to be real with yourself. That's why we need to have these very real conversations. You need to be compatible to
Yeah.
go the distance, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
in every aspect of compatibility.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
you need to be willing to compromise and be okay with the compromise that you made.
Yeah. Yeah. So being flexible in your thought process and in your thinking, that way you can kind of meet your partner in the middle to a certain extent.
And make some decisions for yourself. I don't want you to just say we're all about the partner, because a lot of times as people that are givers, we tend to give, 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 and give. And then when we're not on the receiving end of the things that we want, then there's a level of frustration there.
Yeah.
And then that turns into resentment. So that's what I mean by you got to know what you want going into a thing. And then
Yeah.
you know what you're willing to compromise in the things that you want with the other person. And if that can go the distance.
Yeah. But that's kind of what I was kind of leading to too, is relationships are reciprocal. So if you think about it
Absolutely.
in terms of relationships being reciprocal, and one party likes something, the other party doesn't necessarily like it to a certain extent, but the other party is actually giving that other party what they need, but they're not getting totally over here. So it's like
It needs to be a conversation, because the reality of that is that not getting what I want, reciprocal part,
yeah,
again, leaves cracks in the foundation for you to get it somewhere else. So
yeah,
why can't we have the conversation with your mate? Babe, look, I'm frustrated. I'm having some issues. I'm struggling in this area, and I don't want to go outside the relationship to get these things. So I need to know, what are you going to do?
yeah,
See how point blank that is? We don't
yeah,
want to have those point blank conversations, because now we got a different conversation that we got to have. See, it's kind of like once you know something, now you have to do something about it.
yeah,
But which would you rather have? You gonna go up to the door and go, we're gonna have this conversation. No, not today. And then 5 years later, you're still trying to have this conversation.
yeah.
So who's winning in the relationship? You're 5 years in suffering.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
So I think, I think, I was married before. And I think had we had those very real conversations, we would have not gotten married altogether, or we would be living a completely different life right now.
Yeah,
But we didn't have those real conversations.
yeah, yeah. But having those real conversations gives you the opportunity to actually make real change.
Yes, and you give that other person a choice as to whether or not they can be what you want, need, and desire them to be, and vice versa.
Yeah, yeah. And that's all you really need, is that, I guess, that doorway, that window to actually figure out what's going to be best for you and what's going to be best for the relationship.
Absolutely. And again, a lot of us aren't having those conversations because people change,
Yeah.
things change. What you
Mhm.
wanted 5 years ago, you may not want 5 years in. Let's
Yeah.
tap in. I tell couples all the time, do pulse checks. Where
Mhm.
you at? Where are
Yeah.
you in this thing? How are you feeling? Are you
Yeah.
wanting something different? Are you desiring something different? What's changed? What can I do different? You
Yeah.
know, people don't have, you go for your license. Every so often, you got to take another vision test. Every so often, you got to take another driving test. I think
Yeah.
the same should occur in marriages. Like, okay, where are you? Where do you want to be?
Yeah.
Has anything changed? Just checking in,
Yeah.
because you need those check ins, because people do change.
Yeah.
Our bodies change.
Yeah. You're definitely right about that. You're definitely right about that. So, last question. So, what motivates you to be the best version of yourself daily? Like, what motivates you?
Love.
Okay.
I know that sounds cheesy as all get out. It does. Because I have these moments in my life where I'm frustrated with the way my life is going.
Yeah.
But the moment I step outside of love and my passion
Yeah.
is the moment the other team is winning, because I'm not myself. I'm not giving the best version of myself. I'm in the dump. So I'm stressed or I'm depressed or whatever. And I'm not able to be the best version of myself. And when that happens, I center myself and I go, okay, what do you have today? What do you have for you? What do you have for the world? And that usually turns out to be something loving.
Yeah.
Now, do I argue with myself about this? I just posted something about this the other day. It's me, myself, and I,
Yeah.
and we all struggle. I
Mhm.
think she cooks too much. I think she should get out more. Like there's that
Yeah.
constant battle of who you are, who you want to be versus who you display yourself to be.
Yeah.
And we're all winning when we're in a loving, cohesive situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to thank you for joining me on this conversation on life and relationships. I definitely appreciate your time and for what you do
Thank you.
for couples and 'cause it's amazing. Like it really is. It's a lot of wonderful information. I definitely do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
So again, thank you, Miss Brown, for joining the conversation.
No problem. And then when I'm in your neck of the woods, I'll hit you up.
Okay.